Hey guys, what's up? It's Debbie, and I am back with more True Crimes of Criminal Minds. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season. Hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's Eve. I hope everybody is safe and sound and nobody got in trouble and y'all had a good time. Today, we're going to talk about Season 1, Episode 21 of Criminal Minds. And the name of the episode is Secrets and Lies. Let's get into it. Episode 21 of Season 1 starts with a CIA agent promising to keep a family safe. The agent's name is John Summers. When he gets back to his apartment, there are people waiting for him, and they tie him up and they torture him for information on the whereabouts of this family. Next, we see he's in his apartment. He's zip-tied to a chair. He has been tortured and roughed up unbelievably and killed. And what the CIA did was they went to his apartment after they discovered that he was dead, and they tried to make it look like a suicide. They put a shotgun in his hands and pulled a trigger to make it look. It obliterated all the other torture that was done to him, but it also made it look like he had committed suicide. His fingerprints were on the gun, on the trigger, everything. And they left behind a note, and it read, "I am a patriot. Long live freedom. God bless America." And later in the episode, one of the other CIA agents says that we all write a letter like that. So I guess they all know if something happens and they mess up, they're going to get killed. Gideon sees a newspaper article about his death. So he calls up a contact at the CIA, Deputy Director of Operations Bruno Hawks. And I can't help it. Every time I see the name Bruno, I start singing, "We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no. We don't talk about Bruno." So this song will be in my head the entire episode. So Bruno Hawks asks Gideon to help them find the mole. He calls the team in, but Garcia and JJ have to stay at the office because Garcia is on a list.
Your name? And Nathan. The thing that I don't get is our team's there. Why can't we go to Langley? Do I look like a threat to national security to you? Seriously?
Your name is on a list.
A list? What list? I work for the FBI, and you're telling me I'm on a list that says I can't go to the CIA?
You're on a list.
Garcia. You do know what this means. What? We'll be able to find out whether Princess Diana's death was really an accident. I think that's exactly the kind of thing that got you on their list.
She's not allowed to go to Langley because she's on a list. The rest of the team goes to Langley, which is CIA headquarters. From Langley come in to give Garcia access to the CIA computers. And so all the computers have FBI on them, and they all change to say CIA. John Summers staged the death of a terrorist family, but he really brought them to America. The family is a mother and two children, and she is the wife of a diplomat, a Saudi diplomat, who is helping to fund terrorist organizations. So she has all kinds of information on her husband, and he beats her and SAs her. That's how John Summers got her to become an asset for the CIA, because she wanted away from her husband, and they helped her get away from him, and she has all this information she can give him. The name of this diplomat is Hassan Nadir. The CIA didn't know about Aaliyah, his wife, until 8 weeks prior to Summers bringing them to America. Hassan is now in America on a diplomatic assignment, and John Summers was the only person that knew the location of Aaliyah and her children. So unless they're found, they're either going to starve to death or her husband will find her and she will be killed by her husband. Gideon did a psych eval on John Summers. He has done psych evals on everybody who works in that particular CIA unit. He's kind of a CIA employee, but he's off the books. So he had recently done an evaluation on John Summers. But no one knows who ordered the eval. It was done 3 weeks prior to his death. Summers asked Gideon who called the meeting, and he tells Gideon it could only be one of 4 people, and they believe that one of those 4 is the mole. One of the agents, Kruger Spence, is very antagonistic because of the BAU being in there. They're all apprehensive about the BAU being there, but Kruger Spence is especially upset. As Elle interrogates Olivia, one of the CIA agents, Kruger Spence reveals that he and Olivia are having an affair. Olivia then goes into a secluded room and looks something up on the computer. Then the CCTV feed is cut and she is murdered. Someone walks up behind her and snaps her neck. The BAU call the other 3 suspected moles into a conference room, and they tell them that they found Olivia and that she's dead. Kruger Spence accuses them of lying. They're like, there's no way. How does somebody get murdered at the CIA? Garcia discovers that there's a virus that wiped the CCTV footage, and it originated from Kruger Spence's computer. And of course, when he was questioned about it, he said, somebody put that on my computer to frame me. In the CIA computers, Garcia finds a back door and discovers that John Summers ordered his own psych eval. Originally, they looked at the footage because they were investigating his murder and the mole. And then they realized, after they found out that John Summers had ordered his own psych eval, they realized that he was dropping hints. So when they watched the tape again, Summers talks about boats, and he says he puts important things in a box for safekeeping. So they think, because of all the boat talk and the box talk, they think she's in a shipping container somewhere. So right after that, somebody hacks into Garcia's computer feed. Morgan and another CIA agent, Gina, who's also a suspected mole, they go to search for Aaliyah. The BAU tells Bruno that they think Kruger is the mole. They take Kruger to the conference room to interrogate him. They show him a note and ask him to think before he responds. He responds that he's not the mole. Meanwhile, Hassan Nadir finds his wife and children just before Morgan and Gina arrive. Gideon tells Morgan that he's in charge because it's not in the CIA jurisdiction, it's FBI jurisdiction. Hassan has a gun to his wife's head, and Morgan tells him to drop it. He does so, but then claims diplomatic immunity, and Morgan tells him that the shipping container has not passed through customs, so officially they are not on U.S. soil. So he doesn't have diplomatic immunity right now because they're not considered to be in America. Then Gina points her gun at Morgan and tells him to drop his gun. So now everybody's thinking Gina is the mole, and they're all in deep doo-doo. Gina then points her gun at Hassan Nadir, and Gideon asks Morgan what's going on. And they have a video feed. CIA has cameras everywhere. They record everything. So there's a video feed. And Gideon says, Gina, don't do this. And she says, I don't take orders from you. So she asks Bruno, we don't talk about Bruno, no. She asked Bruno what to do. Sorry, every time I see his name. She asked Bruno what to do, and he tells her to take the shot. And she says, you're going to cut the video feed, right? And he says, yeah, we're going to cut the video feed. So the video feed cuts, and then you hear shots. Gideon talks to Bruno about betraying everything that he ever believed in. Elle shows Bruno the note that they showed Kruger, that they said to think carefully before you respond. The note said, we know it's not you. Bruno is the mole. And Bruno takes a note and puts it in his pocket and says, that's ridiculous. The whole thing that Gina did, pretending to turn on Morgan and shooting Hassan, was because she was trying to confirm her suspicions that Bruno was the mole. Bruno and Hassan killed Summers. When Summers went back to his apartment after stashing Aaliyah and the kids in a shipping container, Hassan went to Summers' apartment along with Bruno. So all this time, Bruno is acting like he was not the one that killed him, but he helped Hassan kill John Summers. And then he came back with a team to make his death look like suicide. Olivia was killed because she was looking into Bruno's finances. Hassan Nadir and his family are all alive and well. Aaliyah is going to be an asset for the CIA. And the very last thing we see in the episode, Gideon is in his office and he's looking at the front page of a newspaper. And the newspaper says in the headline, CIA agent killed in car accident. And there's a picture of Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, no. We don't talk about Bruno. Okay. Today we're talking about Robert Hanssen, the most damaging spy in U.S. history. This man was a POS. He was not a CIA agent, he was an FBI agent, but other than that, pretty much the same kind of a crime. Russian, because this was back during the Cold War. When it comes to the motive of a spy, there's an acronym, and it's MICE, M-I-C-E. M is for money, I is for ideology, or a shift in their belief system, or political. C is coercion or blackmail, when the agent has no choice but to give up the information against his will. And E is for ego. And in the case of Robert Hanssen, his motive was both money and ego. He was infatuated with James Bond and thought life in the FBI would be exciting. When he got bored, he notified the KGB and offered his services. Robert Philip Hanssen was born in Chicago on April 18th, 1944. His father was a Chicago policeman, and he was very, very critical of his son. And Hanssen could not do enough to make this man proud of him. And this was his goal, and everything he did was to show his dad that he was a somebody. He was verbally, mentally, emotionally abused by his dad. When he got engaged, his father asked his fiancée, why do you want to marry my son? He's a loser. Can you imagine? He got a bachelor's in chemistry from Knox College, and he also studied Russian. This was 1966. After graduation, he tried to get a job as a cryptographer with the NSA, but they weren't hiring due to budget restraints. His father wanted him to be a dentist, so he went to dental school. There he met Bernadette Bonnie Walk, and they married in 1968. He didn't like dental school, so he quit and got his MBA at Northwestern University and became an accountant in 1971. Catholic, and she got Bob Hanssen to convert. He was a member of Opus Dei, and I'm not really clear on this because I'm not Catholic. But apparently Opus Dei is an institution of the Catholic Church whose members seek personal Christian holiness and strive to imbue their work in society with Christian principles. Opus Dei means work of God in Latin. After 1 year of accounting, this man so did not know what he wanted to do with his life. After 1 year of accounting, he decided that he wanted to join the Chicago PD like his father. He was an internal affairs investigator, and he specialized in forensic accounting. On January 12th, 1976, he became a special agent with the FBI and was transferred to Gary, Indiana, where he was tasked with investigating financial crimes. So exciting. In 1978, he was transferred to the New York field office. By this time, Bonnie and Robert had 3 children and would go on to have 3 more. The next year, he was transferred to counterintelligence. In 1979, he would approach the KGB for the first time. His motive was supposedly financial. He had 3 kids in private Catholic schools. He was required to give part of his income to Opus Dei. They lived in an upscale neighborhood in New York, and they had credit card debt. But his best friend, Jack Horshauer, said he did it because he liked the excitement. He wanted to be James Bond, have gorgeous women on his arm, and travel to exotic locales. He was not getting that in the FBI. He was basically just a desk worker that didn't go into the field. He was the nerdy computer guy. The New York field office was near the UN and the Russian mission to the UN. In 1979, Hanssen approached the Soviet Main Intelligence Directorate, GRU for short, and offered his services, telling the FBI after he was caught that his only motivation was financial. Oleg Kalugin, a KGB general and head of political operations in the United States, was informed that a spy was selling secrets. He was paid $30,000 and it was sent to an anonymous P.O. box. The information that he sold led to the death of a high-ranking double agent named Dmitry Polyakov, a general in the Soviet Army in 1988. He was an informant for the CIA, and he was killed. From 1979 to 1981, he sold intel to the KGB by leaving classified materials in garbage bags at dead drops. When he made the drop, he would put a white piece of tape on a sign or tree to let the KGB know there was intel for them. Dead drops, the 2 people involved never meet. One drops, leaves. The other one drops money, leaves. The other one comes back and gets his money. They never see each other. They don't know who each other are. In a live drop, that's the exact opposite. They meet, they do their thing, and then they see each other. They know who they're dealing with. But in dead drops, they don't know who they're dealing with. And that was for Hanssen's protection. So the USSR never knew who the mole actually was. This is kind of funny, but only in hindsight. In 1980, his wife saw him writing a letter, and then he tried to hide it from her. And she thought he was having an affair and he was writing a love letter to someone. And he told her, no, I'm writing to the KGB. He told her that they needed money, and he also found a way to trick the Russians. He was providing false intel to them. At least that's what he told his wife. So his wife was like, you're not doing that. You've got to go to confession. So they went to church. He confessed to the priest, and the priest told him that he needed to give all of the money that the Russians had paid him to charity, and that he had to stop what he was doing. Already spent some of the money, and it's unclear if any money ever was given to a charity. I don't think that ever happened. In 1981, he was transferred to Washington, D.C., and he went to work at Quantico for the FBI budget office. Here he had access to wiretapping and electronic surveillance. He and his family moved to Vienna, Virginia, and 3 years later, he was transferred to the Soviet Analytical Unit, where he was responsible for studying, identifying, and capturing Soviet spies. His job was to determine if a spy was trustworthy or a double agent. In 1985, he was transferred back to the New York office to do counterintelligence. During this time, he would visit strip clubs. And at one of these clubs, there was a dancer that he really liked. Her name was Priscilla Gailey. And so he had the waitress send her, or waitress, what are they called? People that serve drinks at a strip club? Are they called waitresses? I don't know. Anyway, he gave her a note to give to Priscilla, and then Priscilla came out and thanked him for the note, and they quickly became an item. They went on trips together. One time they went to Hong Kong, and he had some bar they were in. He had the piano player play As Time Goes By, which was a song from the movie Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart. So, and this guy wanted to be 007, so he kind of saw himself as a cross between Humphrey Bogart and Sean Connery, which I absolutely do not think that man acted like either of those two people. He wore Italian coats and dark sunglasses, and he would rent limos for him and the stripper. And the limo would go pick her up first, and then come back to get him, so no one would see them getting in the limo together. I don't know what they did when they got to wherever they were going, but that was the way they got into the limo. I don't know how they got out. Okay, remember I said this guy was a POS? Personal life too, not just his business life. He would take nude photos, still with the stripper, but he would take nude photos of his wife. And he sent them to his best friend, Jack Horshower, who was in the service. And his friend was like, why are you sending me these pictures? And he was like, oh, just to show you what a beautiful woman she is. Share it around with all the guys. He put a camera in their bedroom, and back then they didn't have live streaming like they do now. Like anybody can live stream. But I think maybe because he was an FBI agent, he had a way to live stream a camera from his bedroom with his wife to his best friend. And he offered to allow his best friend to watch a live stream of him and his wife in bed. But his friend would not do that. He went on to porn sites. One was called myhotwife.com. And he wrote erotica about himself and his wife. And sometimes it was true, and sometimes he would embellish and make things up and make it sound saucier than it was. Stop spying. But then he had a business trip to DC on October 1st, 1985. And here's what he did to get back in the spy game. He wrote a letter offering his services for $100,000. The letter was sealed in an envelope. Then that letter in an envelope was put into a larger envelope. And that envelope was addressed to Victor Degbar. And he was a lower level KGB, and the instructions inside the the outside envelope, warned Victor Dekbar not to open the second envelope, but to give it to Victor Shurkoshin, who was a higher up ranking KGB. Robert Hanssen was able to provide the KGB with intel on the economy, politics, and the military. He outed 3 KGB double agents, Boris Yuzin, Motorin, and Martinov were flown back to Russia, tried, and executed by a gunshot to the back of the head. Yuzin would be sentenced to 15 years, but only served 6, having been released as a political prisoner after the fall of the USSR. Hanssen also told the KGB not to put actual dates and times in documents. Okay, I am using dates that makes the math easy. They're not real dates. It's just an example. So Hanssen said he was going to add 6 to the real date, and that the Russians should subtract 6. The letter was anonymous, and it was just signed with the letter B. After this, Hanssen was transferred back to Quantico to help find the mole. He was assigned to find himself, but the FBI had no idea he was the mole. So he wrote a report about all of the suspected spies, and he did not identify himself in the report, and then he gave a copy of it to the KGB. Mark Walk was Bonnie's brother, Hanssen's brother-in-law. And one day when he was at their house, he saw $5,000 in cash in a bag at their house. And Bonnie also told her brother that Hanssen had been talking about retiring to Poland one day. And at that time, Poland was still part of the USSR. And Mark was an FBI agent too. So he told his superiors what he knew. They didn't do anything. In 1989, he compromised the investigation of a suspected spy, Felix Bloch, by telling the KGB that he was being investigated. Bloch was never charged with espionage, but he was fired and lost his pension. Hanssen also gave the KGB a list of American double agents. In 1991, the USSR fell. It was the end of the country and its federal government. Constituent republics gained full sovereignty on December 26, 1991. This understandably made Hanssen nervous. He was afraid that the fall of the USSR would out him as a spy. By 1991, Hanssen had compromised the entire FBI database, including plans of what to do in a nuclear war, which that terrifies me, that there was somebody in our government giving, at the time, our worst enemy info that could have obliterated us off the map. That is a scary prospect. In 1992, Hanssen went to the parking garage at the Russian embassy and told a KGB agent that his name was Ramon Garcia, which was his code name that he had used before. And he told the guy, my name is Ramon Garcia, and I'm offering my services. And the Russian didn't recognize his code name, so he got in his car and sped away because he didn't know what was happening. But he must have told someone, because a complaint was filed with the FBI, thinking that Hanssen was a triple agent. And again, no action against Hanssen was taken by the FBI. In 1993, he hacked into another FBI agent's computer and printed out a classified document. He showed the document to the agent and said, "You didn't believe it was insecure." His supervisors were not amused, but they believed his story that he was just trying to point out a flaw in the system. Another time, the computer shut down for some reason, and the IT department from the NSA came in to look at the computers. And when they looked at Hanssen's computer, they determined it had been tampered with. So they impounded the computer and they studied his computer more closely. And they found a password cracking software on Robert Hanssen's computer. And he put it there. But he claimed that he put it on there because he wanted to install a printer to his computer, but he didn't want to have to go through all the FBI firewalls and that kind of stuff to install the printer. So that is why he had a password cracking software on his computer. He was warned, but no other action was taken. And after this, he would frequently do searches on the FBI computers. He would type his name in, his real name, to see if he was being investigated. So every time he did it and he came up as not being investigated, he just kept going because he thought everything was cool. In 1994, he joined an FBI-CIA joint mole hunt, codename Gray Suit. A list was made of all of the cases that had been compromised by the mole. The investigation pointed to a CIA agent named Brian Kelly. Having been suspended during the investigation, Kelly was reinstated by the CIA and later received the Distinguished Career Intelligence Medal for his service. Hanssen stopped spying after the fall of the USSR. He stopped spying for 8 years. In 1999, he became a liaison with the State Department. Around that time, a former KGB agent sold a dossier to the FBI for $7 million. There was also an audio tape and documents that had been passed. At first, they didn't recognize the voice on the tape, but Hanssen used a unique expression that he had used before. And it was from General Patton. And I cannot say that expression on YouTube. It's really bad. I was going to say it, and then I was like, no, I don't think I'll go there. But you can Google it if you want to know what he said, because I ain't saying it. So someone recognized the quote, because it was a quote that Hanssen had used before. So they listened to the tape again, and then they knew it was Hanssen. They found his fingerprints on documents in the package that they were given, too. So he was identified now as being one of the spies through voice, pattern, and fingerprints. But he was at the State Department now, and he was out of the reach of the FBI. And he was also set to retire. So they wanted to catch him red-handed. So Neil Gallagher, who was the assistant director of the National Security Division at that time, called Hanssen and told him he had an assignment for him to work with his staff as an assistant on a technical project. Totally bogus assignment. But he told him about the assignment. He was offered a 2-year extension and promoted to senior executive service. He took their offer. Don Sullivan, Special Agent Don Sullivan, was set to replace Hanssen at the State Department. And he went to Hanssen's office to be trained. But he also reported back to the FBI everything that Hanssen said or did, who he met with, any information that he could give to the FBI. By the time he went back to Quantico in January of 2001, he had a brand new office and it was decked out with covert surveillance, cameras, bugs, the phone was wiretapped. Agent Eric O'Neill, acting as Hanssen's assistant, kept tabs on him. Hanssen was on 24-hour surveillance. He was watched from home to work, back to home, home to church, everywhere he went, grocery store, he was surveilled. And there was even a team of agents that watched the house at night to make sure that he didn't go anywhere. His next dead drop was scheduled for February 18th, 2001. A lot of his dead drop locations can actually be seen from his house, and Foxstone Park was no exception. So he put a piece of white tape on the sign and walked to the footbridge. On his way back, they arrested him. And the first thing he said was, "What took you so long?" He confessed to 15 counts of espionage and was debriefed. He was given 15 life sentences without the possibility of parole, and he is incarcerated at the Supermax Florence, Colorado ADX. He is in solitary confinement for his own protection, 23 hours a day with only 1 hour out for exercise. He's been examined by psychiatrists. Journalists have written books. He's talked to a lot of people and done a lot of interviews, but he still says his motive was purely financial. But there are theories. He was a bored, disgruntled employee, and the Russians gave him the praise that he craved. Or he did it out of anger at his father, whom he could never please. Or one psychiatrist said he did it to curb his unusual sexual urges that a good Catholic isn't supposed to have. Whatever the reason, he was paid a total of $1.4 million in cash, diamonds, and bonds, costing the lives of several people along the way. So, that is the story of the most dangerous spy in U.S. history, Robert Hanssen. And he is behind bars to never spy again. And although he was not a serial killer, he did do things that caused the death of people. People that were helping America. So, and like I said, he's a POS. So that's all I have for this week. And I hope to see you next week. Next week is the last episode of season 1. And it is called The Fisher King, and it is one of my favorite episodes. And the next episode will be the second half of The Fisher King because it's a 2-parter. It is the end of season 1, and then it's continued at the beginning of season 2. And you don't have to wait months and months and months like I did the first time I watched it, because you can just watch it right through now. Okay, guys, that's it. I will see you later. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, share, like, do all the YouTubey things. I have a community page now, so check that out too. Sometimes I post things that are coming up. And remember, be kind to people, love your family, and I'll see you next time. Bye!